with public safety. But these facilities, these have been in the last few months. You know, we kind of run into it with our expand. And at the end of the day, one thing that we need to make sure that we are doing, and this is where I have to say I want to remain positive. If we continue to put our youth first, I have to think we could find our way through this. There's one thing for the decision we make on the dais, but then when you look at the other side, the operations, Kirby's, we went through and made some very specific decisions. And then as we look at it,
that just opened last month. Our aquatics program is working very hard with our to find donations and donor support to help keep our pools, to help execute those projects. And then also we received an award, a Community Impact Award, for San Diego River Park for the watershed enhancement team and the good work of keeping the area along that river clean and working carefully with our various partners in the river, including the Parks Foundation there and the good works of the Opportunity Fund. We appreciate the council for working very hard to get this in effect, and this particular Opportunity Fund allocation in the current year has helped secure multiple locations of additional park programming for the fiscal year 2027 draft budget. Several revenue adjustments are shown on this slide, including a reduction in revenue for Balboa Park parking fees that aligns with currently adopted parking rates. Additional environmental city charter section 103.1A increase to the golf land use payment. There's also some money set aside here for funds from the city of Chula Vista for a partnership in managing Otay Valley Regional Park in the South Bay. We also have some new facilities that are opening. Many asked me about how new facilities get opened in the middle of budgetary challenges. And as many of you are aware, these are projects that have been on the books for many years, if not decades. And some of the ones that are coming forward include Byron Park, Eastbourne Park, East Village Green, Hickman Field, Mira Mesa Community Center and Aquatic Center, the expansion of the Pacific Beach Elementary joint use, the introduction of 2 new joint uses, one at Perry Elementary and one at Roan Elementary, and that's in Paradise Hills and in City Heights. Next, the department prepared a series of reduction scenarios that look uniformly across all department operations. So we talk about a 7% reduction. This is across recreation, maintenance, park rangers, brush management, analytical and administrative support, unclassified managers, and supervisors. That amounts to around a $13 million reduction that is provided for you this afternoon. Many of these reductions personnel and therefore filled positions, as many of the reductions the department in the current year were a lot of vacant positions by comparison. One of the most impactful and particular, which directly impacts one of our key located near we have a redundant restroom facility that is nearby, but it would be with a longer walk and potentially longer wait times for those restroom users. Annual weeks per year. This would be inclusive of joint use agreements. Another is the standard middle school. And then also wanted to acknowledge again Price Philanthropies as we're working with them to see if there are options to try to find ways to bring more aquatic funding in for locations in historically underserved communities, with a focus on City Heights and Logan Heights, location of the Memorial Pool. We appreciate Price taking the time to work with the city to try to find ways to bring water access to our kids. Next slide. And then now we're going to look at the slide that has the table regarding the options and slice and dice the $5.4 million amount. This has options that protect recreation centers that are within parks after dark, and also senior centers that are located in historically underserved communities. The options vary based on how the data is analyzed and whether recreation centers serving historically underserved communities are prioritized for protection. None of the options are preferred, as mentioned earlier, and all three have significant adverse impacts on our communities. All options, however, meet the targeted reduction of $5.4 million, and each option can be tweaked in underserved communities. This would result in around 23 recreation centers having no reductions in operational hours. However, 11 sites would have to close under this scenario, and 27 sites would have reduced hours. This in turn would reach the $5.4 million number that is derived from the draft budget. Next slide. Now next we'll show you options 2 and 3, and they both utilize data that was outlined from the Performance and Analytics Department's evaluation of those neighborhoods. Like option 1, option 2 also minimizes reduction to recreation center hours of operation in historically underserved communities, resulting in 28 recreation centers with no reduced hours. But to get there, we'd have to look at 15 sites to close, and 20 other sites would have reduced hours. Very significant. And then the next slide is option 3, which shows this contemplates without as much an eye towards equity. In historically underserved communities, 22 recreation centers would have no option as well. Now, I want to spend a moment talking about Balboa Park, which has been a focal point of conversation over the past years. The paid parking program began, which is currently estimated around $7.4 million. We're going to continue to look at options to help bring more revenue into the park and help to allow for Balboa Park to be operated at an appropriate level. Now, next I want to talk about the changes that are proposed organizationally to bring the Office of Special Events into using the online permitting platform to process other permit types. So there is some synergy there. Next, we request for a separate administrative aid that would be requested for addition to improve the operational competency of the program. Next, I want to speak about the Golf Enterprise Fund and the Golf Operations Division. This division is funded through user fees and has an enterprise fund. The Torrey Pines Golf Course is part of that portfolio and is internationally renowned with a PGA Tour stop that occurs annually. The last iteration of that event brought forward 13.9 billion media impressions, 14.7 million broadcast views, and $67.5 million in local economic impact. The draft budget totals $33.1 million in expenditure needs, and golf anticipates generating next year. The combined capital need between 2027 and 2031 is estimated at $128 million. Next slide, you'll see the enterprise funds expected to grow in the upcoming year, with an enterprise funds expected to grow in the upcoming year, with an increase of nearly $3.5 million in revenue and an increase of $1 million in various expenses. We want to close out here by describing our core baseline services, and we're looking to protect as much as we can while recognizing parks, open space, recreational programming, swimming pools, regional parks, brush space, recreational programming, swimming pools, regional parks, brush management, park rangers, and permitting that are all impacted in some capacity as a result of the budget that is in front of you today. Our final slide here analyzes passed along to the department is to address contracts and services and have it be funded and installed in a timely fashion. So we're continuing to work on areas like that. So that concludes our presentation. We are here for any questions and appreciate you all for your support of Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We will now go to the IDA's.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Riku Patel from the IDA's office. I have some brief comments on a few of the department's proposed budget adjustments before I'll turn to the Recreation Center reduction options. And for reference, our review of the Park and Recreation Department proposed budget begins on page 231 of our report. First, regarding the city's animal services contract, $633,000 in additional funding is included in the proposed budget to support CPI cost increases only. San Diego Humane Society has agreed to accept and maintain the current $1.2 million contractual shortfall for both fiscal years 2027 and the following fiscal year, fiscal 28. But it expects to be made whole for the cumulative shortfall from fiscal year 2026 through 2028, amounting to $3.6 million, which is going to be due in fiscal year 2029. The other item I'd like to touch on is the proposed reduction associated with brush management. This is an area that perennially has been a priority for council members, including for fiscal year 2027, with the majority of council members prioritizing additional funding for the Department's open space brush management program. As you heard, with the proposed reduction of 2 grounds maintenance workers that perform brush abatement, the department expects that approximately all 3 hours, 2 priorities, that the preservation of doors or no change at all, and it also distinguishes facilities in historically underserved communities and whether they have a gym or not. This operationally implemented in the general fund budget is ultimately balanced with other offsetting adjustments in the Parks and Recreation Department's budget or elsewhere in the general fund. Adjustments in the Parks and Recreation Department's budget or elsewhere in the general fund. One potential opportunity may be available to utilize Gulf Fund resources to support some degree of rec center restorations. However, additional analysis will be required to determine an amount that wouldn't have negative impacts on the golf program CIP or general operations, and we plan to include a discussion of this in our final budget modification recommendations report. If council members prefer one of these specific options that staff has presented, you should communicate that today, so it may be incorporated into May revise. And regardless if there are options that were presented or other modifications, or alternative reductions you would like to see and use to formulate our final to discuss.
Budget, including the special events and filming adjustments. Adjustments, including the CP1 areas, have comparatively less impact on underserved communities, but an approach to preserve as many hours as possible in underserved communities, resulting in 20 facilities with reduced hours and 15 full closures, with most closures outside of historically underserved areas.